Шановні гості, вітаємо вас на 7-му міжнародному
So, greetings
форумі
again on
Центральної
the
та Східної
7th
Європи Via
International Forum for
Carpatia.
Central and Eastern Europe, Viva
Я
Carpatia,
представлю
and
гостей,
I
які
present to
будуть
you
брати участь
the
у нашій першій
um,
оборонній панелі. Це
speakers in the first
насамперед
defense panel
полковник
discussion.
Геннадій
First,
Коваленко,
Colonel
директор
Gennady Kovalenko, Director of
департаменту
Department
міжнародного
of
оборонного співробітництва
International Defense
Міністерства
Cooperation at the
оборони
Ministry of
України.
Defense of Ukraine.
Це Микола
Mykola
Княжицький, народний
Kняжицький,
депутат
as an
України, голова
MP,
підкомітету з питань
head of the
культурної політики
Committee
Комітету
of Cultural
Верховної
Policy
Ради
in
з
the
питань
Parliament,
гуманітарної та
as well as
інформаційної
humanitarian and
політики. Це
information
Михайло
policy.
Самусь,
Mikhailo
директор
Samus,
мережі
director
нових
of the
геополітичних
Network of New
досліджень,
Geopolitical
також співзасновник
Studies, also
консорціуму
co-founder of
оборонної
Consortium of
інформації.
Defense Information, Alexander Sushko, Executive Director of International Renaissance Foundation, and also online we have Marek Pravda, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland. First, we will give floor to Gennady Kovalenko, Director of Department of International Defense Cooperation. And I'd like to ask Gennady, so you have been working with NATO structures for quite a long time. You participated in the Ramstein meetings where the whole package of military technical assistance for Ukraine were shaped. And now the question is, what is the experience, what are the conclusions that NATO structures have made in transformation of their approaches in the background of this Russian-Ukrainian war? And what will be the Ramstein format after the changes that happened in the US? How can we retain that approach of supporting Ukraine?
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I would like to pass the best regards and wishes and welcome from our Minister of Defense to the participants. He wishes all of you great success and bright future and victory to Ukraine. So I will give you additional reason to listen my beautiful Oxfordshire accent for next 3 minutes. I have spent 40 months, 3 years and a half in the Allied Command Transformation, Norfolk, Virginia. That's the strategic NATO command which responsible for the strategic documents and strategic vision of NATO for the future. So speaking about lessons learned for NATO and the European Union and the other countries, so I have 6 of them, and I will start with the deployment of extra troops. As you know, they are planning to have 8 battle groups in the Eastern European countries. So we now have 4 of them in 3 Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. And we will have 4 another battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia. So how Ukraine can be operational or instrumental to that concept? First of all, we would be grateful to have Ukrainian liaison officers and NCO, non-commissioned officers, in order to study the experience from the Baltic states, Poland, and the other countries, how to deploy NATO forces on the territory of the other countries, including the legislative basis, logistics, and support. In this regard, we are working quite intensively in the development of the host nation support concept in order to get Ukraine ready for that. Second lessons learned for NATO and the EU is long-range surveillance from the air. We know that NATO decided to deploy AWACS systems, eyes and ears in the air from Romania and Poland. And in this regard, again, Ukraine can be instrumental and helpful with the upcoming capabilities which we'll be gaining from our Swedish friends. I mean the SAB system, which will be soon obtained by Ukraine. The third lessons learned is air policing. I was lucky to be the first Ukrainian officer who studied at the Baltic Defense College in 2003-2004. That's in Tartu, in Estonia. And at that time, we had exercise in Zokniai, in Šiauliai Air Base, and we studied which kind of aircraft can be deployed on the territory of the former Soviet Union in Lithuania. So now we have, in Baltic states, they have NATO policing missions in Estonia and in Lithuania. In this context, Ukraine can provide support in terms of the air situation data exchange and including the data from our upcoming and already existing fleet of the F-16 aircraft, which we have. Next lessons learned is joint missile defense. That's probably one of the most important and most promising lessons learned from NATO, for NATO from the Russian aggression against Ukraine. And we know that NATO is conducting study of the air and missile defense here in Ukraine. And we are working, we are not hoping, hope is not good strategy. We are working on the integration of the future Ukrainian air defense system into NATO.
Дуже дякую за ці важливі акценти, які стосуються поточної справи і перспективи.
Thank you for important aspects of current cooperation with Poland in particular. You mentioned the center JTAC for training the personnel of two armies. And then I would like to proceed to cooperation with Poland, because Poland, at the very first stage of large-scale invasion by Russia, has provided incredible assistance to Ukraine. It was armored vehicles, the air defense, artillery, ammunition. It was super important back in the time of dire need. Now we proceed to the new stage, where we need to expand the training of our military in Poland, creating new joint companies, looking for financial options to support our defense industry. And I would like to now to get to our discussion. Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Marek Prawda. Marek, I'd like to ask you, thanks to what joint action should we become stronger against Russian aggression? What lessons should we draw? What prospects should we outline as the most optimal in short-term perspective? You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. I wish to start by expressing my thanks for the opportunity to address this gathering and to share some thoughts on Ukrainian lessons. I have a couple of quick points to make. For decades, we have been working on the assumption that the sun will always shine, and tomorrow is a better version of today. Now, 2 years after the outbreak of the war, we know that it was overly optimistic attitude, and this has an impact on the way the EU is thinking of itself. So I would say the first lesson in the EU is that we should be prepared also for a stormy weather. As a result of the war, the EU is turning from a factory of rules into a community of faith, and for obvious reasons, security, the issue of security moves to its top priorities. And there is an attempt to increase the output of the EU defense industry, and that's what, for example, my Prime Minister was saying after the famous meeting in Budapest a couple of days ago. It's about developing financing options out of the box thinking, so that we as European Union can be able to increase the output in that field. And perhaps I would formulate this lesson that we take from the war is that peace and freedom must be defended with all our might. Otherwise, we will be confronted with the might and ruthlessness of the others. So, to put it in other words, the democracy should be able to win wars. And perhaps a second lesson, in my eyes, it's that no gray zones of security should be allowed. The Russian invasion has affected the situation on the continent, and we compare it very often with the political breakthrough of '89, and then the big enlargement wave 2004. At that time, it seemed to us that there is possible to live with gray zones of security. And after 22, we know very well that such in-between spaces no longer exist. A hard strategic fault line now cuts across the continent. So if the European countries that are outside of the EU and NATO will sooner or later become an object of ill instrument of the Russian Federation. So that's why it is in the Union's strategic interest to firmly embed the states, so to speak, on our side of that line into a secure home. This is a new thinking about enlargement. We know that non-enlargement will cost us anyway more than the enlargement. And lesson number 3, the EU is becoming more Eastern. I think I can make it clear in 2 points. First, a mental revolution is taking place in societies and elites. They no longer look at the East exclusively through Russian glasses. They see now various entities, various states, and their own peculiarities, own values, purposes, and dreams. Many colleagues from the western part of Europe, they thought they knew Ukraine, but they knew the Russian storytelling about Ukraine, and that's not the same. That's why it was so easy to explain that Ukrainians are nationalists and so on. So, but there's a second element of this Easternization, as I call it. The Eastern element is becoming the component of the European collective identity. It's something new, and we owe it to Ukraine, when I can say it that way. Also, the Eastern expertise is becoming an indispensable part of European approach if we want to rise to the challenge of Russia.
Mr. Deputy Minister, thank you so much for such an interesting content for your lessons from the Russian-Ukrainian war. Thank you. So next in our discussion, Mykola Knyzhitsky, MP of Ukraine, co-head of the Deputy Group of the Parliament of Interparliamentary Connections with Poland. Mykola, I'd like to ask you, what are your assessments? What are your conclusions from the 3-year experience of war with Russia? What are the accents, the stresses should be done so that our society strengthens its position in the further conflict with Russia? Thank you. Dear Minister, dear colleagues, we have in our audience Artem Kovalev, co-head of our group. We're expecting a great Polish delegation, which will join us in minutes to participate in the next panel discussions. I would like to talk not so much about the lessons we've learned from our defense, because it's been almost 3 years, and will be 3 years since the war, or 11 years that the war started. Among the challenges that we face, among the lessons that we have to learn,
А
of
я
these
маю на
recent
увазі,
events,
звичайно,
and I
перш за
mean,
все,
of
результат
course,
виборів в
the
Сполучених
results
Штатах
of
Америки,
US
які ми
elections
маємо.
that we have at the
Я
moment.
щиро вдячний пану міністру Правді
I
за
thank you to
участь в
Minister
нашій
Pravda
панелі
for
і іншим нашим
participation in our
польським
panel
колегам,
discussions, and I thank
оскільки
all our
кожного
other Polish
дня
partners,
читаємо
because
новини
we
про
read the
те,
news
що
every day
або прем'єр Туск
that either Prime Minister
їде
Tusk
говорити з
goes
Великою
to talk with
Британією, з
Great Britain
Францією
and
про
France
підтримку України,
about
або
supporting
свіжа новина,
Ukraine, or
що
the new,
міністр закордонних справ
the fresh news
Сікорський
that
скликає
Deputy
Європейську
Minister
Раду для того, щоб
Sikorsky
говорити про
calls the
підтримку
European Council
України.
to talk about
Польща
helping Ukraine.
демонструє
Poland
справжнє і велике
demonstrate
лідерство в цій
real
дуже
leadership
непростій
in
ситуації,
this
а
difficult
насправді в
situation.
кризі.
But in fact, that it's
Чому ця криза
crisis. So what
виникла?
is this crisis
Які
about? How
уроки
it
з
emerged?
цієї
What are the
кризи ми
lessons
маємо винести
out
для
of this
себе?
crisis we
Ну,
can and
по-перше,
we should
треба
learn?
сказати, що
Well, first thing we
те,
should
що
do, we should
відбулося в
say that
Сполучених Штатах
what
Америки,
happened in the
ставить перед
US
нами дуже багато питань.
poses a lot of
Чи
questions to us.
збережеться роль
Will the
Сполучених
role
Штатів
of
як країни
US
демократичної?
be kept as
Чи
a democratic
збережеться в
country?
самих Сполучених
Will the US
Штатах?
stay
Чи
democratic?
збережуть вони основні базові
Will the
демократичні
US
цінності?
basically
як, наприклад,
retain the
верховенство права?
basic
Чи
values
будуть
as
вони
the rule of law? Will they help
слідкувати за збереженням верховенства
monitor
права
and
в цілому
retain
світі?
the
А ця
rule of
роль
law in the whole
завжди була
world?
в
This
Сполучених
role has
Штатах
always been with the
Чи
US.
все це зникне?
Or will it
Зникне взагалі
disappear?
лідируюча роль
Will the
Сполучених
leading role of
Штатів
the US
Америки
will
як таких?
disappear as
І
such?
якою буде ця роль в
And
новому
what
світі?
will this role be in
Очевидно,
the new world?
що сама
So
американська
obviously
система
that the
зараз
American system
дає нам
itself
надії.
gives us some hope,
Бо росіяни
because
найбільше хотіли,
Russians wanted,
очевидно, сподіваючись на перемогу Дональда
obviously
Трампа,
hoping
який
for
з
Trump to
їхньої точки
win,
зору
who
мав би
in their mind
знищити чи послабити
would
НАТО,
destroy
підтримку
or
в
weaken
світі, але
NATO.
більше всього вони хотіли
But
дестабілізації
mostly
Сполучених
they
Штатів.
wanted to destabilize
Тому
the
що якби
US.
дійсно результати виборів були
Because
такими, що вони були би
if the results
надзвичайно
were
близькими,
such
і
as
американське суспільство не змогло
close
би
and the
забезпечити
American
плавний
society
перехід
would
влади
not be
в
able
разі
to
її зміни,
guarantee
і
transition,
подальші
peaceful
демократичні
transition of
процеси,
power and
то
the
це було би для
next
нас найбільшим
democratic
викликом.
process, that would be the
І
biggest
тут
challenge for us.
якраз ще
And this
чинний
is
президент
where
Байден
the
продемонстрував мудрість і,
current
по суті,
President
вибив
Biden
всі козирі з
was
рук тих,
wise,
хто хотів дестабілізації Сполучених Штатів,
throwing all the
коли сказав, що
wild cards
влада в
from those who want to
Сполучених Штатах буде
destabilize
передана в мирний спосіб.
US and who said that
Існує
there will be a
багато
peaceful transition of
інших
power.
міфів,
There are other
які стосуються
myths
Сполучених
that
Штатів. Один з них
relating
це
the
те,
US.
що
One of them
Сполучені
is that the
Штати
US
будуть проводити
will be
ізоляціоністську політику.
conducting the
І тут треба
isolationist
подивитися,
policy.
чи
And
вся
we have
ця
to see
ізоляціоністська
whether
політика
all of
буде
this
стосуватися цілого
isolation
світу.
policy will be
Чи лише
regarding the whole
України?
world or just Ukraine.
Бо я не вірю, наприклад,
Because
в
I
те,
don't
що
believe
Сполучені
that
Штати Америки
the
не будуть
US
займатися
will
тим,
not
що
be
буде відбуватися в Південно-Східній Азії,
dealing with
в
Southeast
на
Asia
Тайвані,
and
в
Taiwan
Японії,
and Japan
Південній Кореї,
and
в
South
Австралії,
Korea
Новій
and
Зеландії,
Australia,
в
New
цьому
Zealand and the whole region.
достатньо сказати те,
It's
що, наприклад,
suffice to say
новий
that the
державний
new
секретар
State
Сполучених Штатів
Secretary
Марк Рубіо
Mark Rubio
був співголовою
was
Сполучених Штатів такої організації, яка
leader
називається
of
IPEC.
the
Це
IPAC,
міжнародна організація у справах
International
Китаю, яка підтримує демократію
organization
в
of
азійсько-тихоамериканському
China,
регіоні і
supporting
виступає проти
democracy
обмежень
in
демократії в
Asian
Китаї.
region
З
and
українського
speaks
боку,
against the limitation
ми
of
з
democracy
моїм
in
колегою
China.
Мережко
On the other
маємо
hand,
честь
with
теж
my
бути
colleague Mereshko, we
співголовами
are
цієї
co-heads of
організації
this
в Україні.
organization
І
from the side of
сенатор
Ukraine,
завжди цікавився
and
цим
Senator
питанням.
Rubio was always
То
interested in
виникає
that.
питання,
So the question is
чи
now
цей
whether this
ізоляціонізм буде стосуватися лише
isolationism
України?
will only be about
Очевидно, в мене є
Ukraine.
дуже
Obviously,
велика надія, що
I have great hopes
так не буде.
that that's not going to be the case. Thank you, Mikola. So, continuing the logic related to external changes, external challenges, I would like to pass the floor to Alexander Sushko, Executive Director of Renaissance Foundation, who helped us so much in having our event. I would like to ask Alexander, is Europe ready and NATO, are they ready to tackle the challenges happening in the US and what scenarios we can draw from this situation? Thank you. Well, we can start by saying that experience teaches us to distinguish, understanding that Europe by now is a patchwork. It's not homogeneous in terms of priorities and interests. So it's hard to generalize when they ask me, is Europe ready? It's getting ready. It's getting ready for changes. Changes through obvious things. Because Europe bears more and more responsibility for what is happening in Europe. And it's not just a slogan of Trump. It is basically inevitable, regardless of who will be in Washington. One way or another, re-evaluation of what's the contribution of European nations in European security is here. It's here to stay. For a long time, the model was where the US was proportionally playing a bigger role, and that's the role that you can't keep playing eternally. Now, it's obvious that there were some leaks in the media that there had been some meetings and there had been messages that European leaders, even before the American election, were coming together, discussing what to do next if the power changes in the US. And that's where the new reality is supposed to start, where Europe will be thinking about their security much more. Part of that is attitude to Russian aggression in Ukraine as a European war. Yeah, you mentioned external challenges, but there are also internal challenges that Ukrainian society has to resolve when we talk about mobilization, conscription, demobilization, preparing the teams, preparing the military, the staff and structures, the whole package of issues that currently need to be resolved. And the Consortium of Defense Information just days ago completed the document, the vision of the defense aspects of internal victory plan, and it's the addition to the foreign policy initiatives that the president announced. And I would like to give the floor to Mikhailo Samos, who is the co-founder of the Consortium of Defense Information, with the question, what solutions Ukrainian experts offer to facilitate changes to improve the military and to strengthen Ukrainian society. Internal domestic problems. I show the printed version to my colleagues of this document. We started working on this document a long time ago. The first idea emerged in April when we assessed the situation by modeling the possible win of Trump. What can be the responses from Ukraine and the world, the priorities and development of the US and Europe, including Ukraine. And we arrived at a conclusion back in April that the main threat for Ukraine will be internal instability, internal problems that Russia has been using both a century ago, 500 years ago, in order to destroy Ukrainian state. Because we didn't lose in the war. We did not lose, and Russia will not win us militarily, like blatantly against. They can advance a couple of kilometers forward, but they will not conquer the entire Ukraine. So how are they going to win in this foreign policy matrix that we have? And with our colleagues, we saw the challenges, the internal challenges. Of course, we looked at the defense aspects, the security aspects. Thank you so much. These were our first discussion, and it was a positive experience. Thank you so much. We will continue next year.